Hi, and welcome to Answers News for October the 15th, 2018. And we're all back, so that's a good thing.
We're back. We're here.
Yep,
we're back.
Here. And we have a wonderful studio audience joining us today, so clap, make yourselves known.
There they are. All right.
There's really hundreds of thousands of them.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
right.
They all fit in this room.
So it's great to have them on board. Hey, just while we get ready to start and going through the various articles and so on, thought I'd tell you an interesting story. As I get online here myself, so people can start putting comments, and then we monitor the comments on my Facebook, on Answers in Genesis Facebook, and on YouTube. So it directs to all three. And so just recently, my wife and I went to her favorite restaurant in the area. It's a Chinese restaurant, Oriental Walk. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting down, and then the daughter of the owner came over to us and said, hey, there's a group of Chinese people coming in later, and there's been a number of them this year, and they've been to the Ark and the museum. And then the owner came over and was all excited and telling us that this group of Chinese people was coming in, and said they were late because they spent too much time at the Ark, because they liked the Ark so much. Well, anyway, when they came in, they saw the leader of the group, and the leader found out I was there in the restaurant. He came over and talked to us and said hi, and found out that he's from California, and he retired at age 45 to go into full-time Christian work. And he said he had heard from Hong Kong, from a friend in Hong Kong, about an Ark in America. How's that? God uses all sorts of interesting things. And so he flew out from California to go to the Ark and the museum, was so taken by them and saw them as an incredible opportunity to witness to people that he started organizing for Chinese people to come out and come to the Ark and the museum. And he'd been bringing about one group a month. Next year, he hopes to bring 2 to 3 groups a month.
And that's groups of what, about 60 people or so?
Well, this was the group that was there at the restaurant. And so he asked me if I would come over to say hi, and they were sort of in a separate part of the restaurant. It was near the main pub, just off to the side. And then the owner came over and gave me a microphone, and then the leader said, you talk, I translate into Chinese. So I had to give an impromptu talk in the restaurant. And so I talked about the Ark and the Creation Museum. And then they all wanted a photograph, so we went over there and got our photograph. And he was telling me that usually 50% of them are non-Christian.
Wow.
And so he said, the Ark and the Creation Museum are the best way to witness to non-Christians. And actually, we found
powerful.
About 30% of people who come to the Ark are non-Christians. So anyway, that was just an interesting story. Who would have thought I went to a restaurant for a relaxing evening, end up giving a talk translated into Chinese? Who would have thought that would happen?
That's right. I'll always be ready in season and out of season.
Exactly.
To preach the gospel.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so this is kind of a fun one. Tiny Hawaiian gecko accidentally calls a bazillion people from hospital phone, wins the internet. So this is about a little gecko in Hawaii who got onto the touch screen of a phone, and as the person said, started making calls with his tiny gecko feet. And to some people, he called like multiple times, like not just one time. However, he was stepping on it.
10 or 15 times.
Yeah, calling people incessantly. So
crazy gecko. What was it thinking when it called? I could save 15% or more on my car insurance.
That's probably why.
I knew that was coming at some point.
Yeah, I suspect that's why he was calling, actually.
Yeah, I would think that people that, that insurance company might want to use this
Oh,
article
yeah,
to their
I'm surprised they don't
advantage
get a hold of this one.
Yeah. So
But,
anyway, so they at least solved the mystery of how...
why these calls were going everywhere.
And they said they drafted an apology to everyone on staff who may have gotten a call from the Tiny Green Minister.
Sorry about the gecko call.
Yeah.
So, hey, somebody on here from New York City, glad to see the original team back together again. Bodie, I missed your puns. You have a pun?
Well, yeah, hopefully I'll throw one or two out there.
Yeah, we'll try and see what you can come up with.
We're the A team, right?
The A team.
Right.
Should somebody have a mohawk or?
Somebody on here says, they said, looking forward to being here in person and listening to the 3 great minds.
Oh.
I'm not sure
who's
about
going to
that.
be
Well,
here for
Bodie
me?
and I are here. Who else are they talking about?
Ha ha ha, very funny. Okay. Canadian profs bully female student into silence after she brought up abortion in class. So this is in British Columbia. at University of the Fraser Valley. So basically, we don't know exactly what all she talked about with abortion, but she brought it up, and they said to her, these professors, that made the classroom unsafe because she started talking about abortion. And she wasn't talking about it in a positive sense, that it was a good thing, but in a negative sense.
Yeah, apparently she brought up some medical statistics that went against abortion, and I guess they went right at her.
Yeah.
They're not happy with her at all.
You know, this is happening not just with abortion, but in areas of transgender, gay marriage, male and female restrooms, that you're not allowed to disagree. You have to succumb. And what's happening is secularists are imposing their worldview on generations of people. And, you know, they don't just want acceptance for that. They don't just want to be able to do abortions or believe in that or gay marriage or
want you to
whatever.
bow down to it.
They want you to bow down to it. Yeah, they want to force their views on you, and that's what we're finding more and
they
more.
even say freedom of speech is that you have the opportunity to share, provided it isn't hurtful of other people. Well, then it's not free speech.
Well, then it's not freedom of
I mean,
speech.
that doesn't make any. That's not truly free.
And
It isn't.
their views are hurtful of Christians, and if you want
That's
to,
right.
if you want to say
That should be wrong for them to say
Exactly.
anything.
You know, I met someone again last week. I have heard this so many times in America as I've traveled around, and that is either parents or the actual students themselves will tell me their students went to university in the freshman class, and a professor will say something like, how many of you say you're Christians, or how many of you are creationists? You won't be at the end, because I'm going to do all I can to undermine your particular views.
That's
They
kind of
actually
their
say
goal.
that outright, and that sort of thing happens more than people realize. And it shows you they're just out to be anti-Christian. They're not out for freedom of religion or free exercise of religion or free speech or whatever.
And this isn't just a case of a he said, she said kind of a thing.
Right.
The student actually had a meeting with the professor as well as the department, and she recorded that conversation. And you can read a full transcript of it, you know, how they
And
really
this was in the
looked into her.
teacher education program. So get that. It wasn't in like a science program or philosophy or something like that. She's being told this even in the teacher education program. And what it amounts to, we see all the time, is really a double standard.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay if they want to talk about atheism or that abortion's good or gay marriage is good or whatever, but if you say the opposite, you dare to question that, then it's a problem.
Well, we see that happening in America in regard to all sorts of situations where you see conservative speakers are not allowed to be, even if they're not Christian, but they're conservative in their views, are not allowed to speak on campuses, or there's protests, or there's violence and they cancel the meetings. That's a sort of bias that's out there. There's an incredible battle going on.
They just told her in a previous meeting, even they said that she'd been told to keep her Christian identity to herself. I mean, imagine if somebody came in and said that of, say, Muslims or Jews or anyone else, or even of atheists. That's right. Just say, you know, you got to keep your atheism to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, how would that be construed? In some
Somebody said here, abortion is unsafe for the mother and especially for the baby.
That's exactly right.
And you know, when you think about it, one of the most dangerous places for a child to be in America, in fact, probably in the whole world, is in their mother's womb.
Exactly.
It's probably the most dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Oh my, yeah.
Somebody commented on here, they got to visit the Ark and the museum during our recent pastors conference and Christian leaders conference that we had just last week. Said, I started reading Gospel Reset today and going to utilize everything for our addiction ministry at our church.
Wow.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Gospel Reset is a new book I came out with on evangelism, how to evangelize a culture that's changed foundation, and challenging people to understand our culture is not like it once was. The culture has changed. It's more a Greek culture like Acts 17. It's not like Acts 2. And we need to recognize that, or we're not going to reach
Did you
the
see
culture.
that? He's giving an impromptu talk.
I am.
No, but actually it was a really good conference.
It was an excellent conference. Lots of good
It was
feedback.
sold out. We had Dr. John MacArthur here for the conference. A number of speakers. Ken opened the conference and essentially closed it out.
Yeah.
So it was a really good conference. So.
Somebody said here, glad to see book 3 of the Answer series on the desk. I'm currently reading book 2.
Oh, all right.
Well, we have book 3 there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right?
And
then there's book 4, and then book 5 is The Flood of Evidence. Actually, those 5 books are the biggest selling creation apologetics books in the world, and have 160 of the most asked questions that people ask with detailed answers. That's how to get yourself equipped.
Yeah, it really is. And in fact, one of the chapters in here is on abortion, one on stem cells and cloning, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of little chapters, on the ark and the flood and so forth. But that relates to our very next article.
Yep. The Irish Parliament is debating a bill to legalize abortion services in the country. So there's been a lot in the news about this, basically there was a referendum that overturned the ban on abortion. And so now they're trying to figure out basically the details of it, to figure out how this is going to change, because it's part of their constitution that they're against abortion. And so they actually have to make an amendment to the Constitution to allow for this.
And read this though, think about this. They said, that they're going to allow abortion on demand up to the 12 weeks of pregnancy, or in case of a fetal abnormality. Who determines what that is? Yeah. Or to where the physical or mental health of the mother is in danger. Well, once they do that sort of thing, you can open up.
And they want to do it free of charge, basically taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Terminations would be made available free of charge. Notice they say terminations, because it's termination of life.
That's what it is.
Well,
that's what it is.
And they talk a lot about equality in this article. Well, this is all about equality. Equality for who? It's not equality for the unborn when you take their life. That's not equality.
Yeah. But, this shows from a big picture that, even if you fight this at the highest level, at, say, a constitutional level, you have it passed in law, people can come in and change those laws.
Yeah, because as a person thinks in their heart, so are they. That's what the scripture says. It says here, there was a resounding affirmation of support for the right of women to make choices about their lives. No, for the right for women to murder their child.
Yeah. There's no right to life there.
Abortion is really child sacrifice to the God of self. I mean, that's really what it is.
One of the things that was interesting in here is there's a lot of doctors that object to this. In particular, they're trying to make a doctor who says, oh, well, you know what, I don't want to perform this. Right. They want to make him or her, recommend them to a doctor that will. Yeah. And they want to say, no, I don't want to have any part of this. Yeah. And so even that's a battleground right now.
Yeah, but think of what's happening in some of the other countries. It'll end up happening there too as well. For instance, in 2014, a Polish doctor was fired for refusing to perform an abortion. That's also happened in Scotland, where some midwives lost a legal battle in 2012 to avoid taking part in abortion procedures against their objections. That sort of thing will happen in America as well. If you don't agree to do these things, again, they don't just want freedom to do these things; they want to force you to do them. They want to force their worldview on you.
That reminds me of Exodus, when the Pharaoh told the midwives to go in there and kill the baby boys. And the midwives, they took their sweet time so that the babies were born in advance and that sort of thing. They feared God. They didn't want to do what the Pharaoh commanded, to kill all those little boys. And the Pharaoh wasn't happy with them, not by any means. But, I love what the Bible says there. So God dealt well with the midwives.
Yeah, it may come down to civil disobedience.
Right. It's a matter.
God's law.
Who are you going to fear? Are you going to fear God, or are you going to fear man? Yeah. And I think in this case, there's a lot of people who fear man way too much.
Yeah, people love the praise of men rather than the praise of God. That's right. That's what the scripture says. Yeah. So, somebody, homeschooling group from South Africa that are watching. How about that?
All right, good.
Okay, schools. Tiny daily bread sign is religious brainwashing, atheist group says. So this is in a Maryland school, and there's a plaque that shows, you can see it there, it's a plaque that just is 7 words from the Lord's Prayer, right? And the Freedom from Religion Foundation is saying this is unconstitutional because it violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Now,
give us this day our daily bread, in kind of an old English style.
And there's not even a Bible verse there, and actually a lot of people today wouldn't even know where that quote came from. But the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they're a group out of Wisconsin. If you look on their website, there's only a small group, but they bully all across America to force atheism on people. In fact, they call themselves unabashed atheists.
That's right.
And so whenever they see anything Christian, well now, even with a sign like that, anything that in some way is connected to Christianity or connected to the Bible, even if it doesn't say so, they try to bully to get any mention of Christianity anywhere or anything Christian out of public schools,
the Bible,
out of the culture.
Yeah, the Bible says train a child in the way that he should go. I mean, imagine if that was in a public school system, people get sued. I want you to understand, education is a Christian thing. Would they sue to remove that as well?
So if there was a sign up there, do not steal, I mean,
or do not murder.
That's in the Ten Commandments.
I'm sure they have rules against cheating. I mean, I'm sure those kids aren't allowed to cheat. Well, what's the basis for not cheating? You have to have an ultimate standard to say that cheating is wrong. Laws, and the only ultimate standard is God's word.
That's right. Laws, rights, education, all those things. Absolute standards come from God and His Word. Right. Now, here's the thing. If atheists don't want to have their daily bread, they don't have to eat. They can just skip it.
That would solve the problem.
That would solve it.
Yeah.
And there's not even, and notice too with this sign, think about it, there's nothing about God, nothing about Jesus, there's no Bible reference given, nothing, and yet it's not, not acceptable.
See, part of the problem, I think, is the Freedom from Religion Foundation started bullying, and they threaten lawsuits, and people have given in because they don't want to have to go through, dealing with a lawsuit, and so now they're really going all out for anything they can get rid of out of the culture. Didn't someone even object to the Old English writing?
Yeah, they actually objected to that as well.
Old English, well, that's Christian.
Seriously? And they're not freedom from religion. When they say freedom from religion, that's not what they mean. They mean freedom from Christianity is really what it's
I mean, you don't see all the lawsuits of them filing, against all these textbooks that promote atheism and humanism and some of those religious secular beliefs. We don't see that.
Yeah.
Somebody said here, every knee will bow. What will their excuse be on Judgment Day? You know what?
True.
God sits in the heavens and in a sense laughs. The scripture says that because he sees the folly of man. They think that they can come against God and they can do whatever they want. Every one of them has to answer to God. Every one of us will stand before God. Every one.
Yep.
All right, Cassini revealed 3 big surprises before diving into Saturn. So this was basically the spacecraft, Cassini, that was out there taking really close-up shots of Saturn as it plummeted towards the planet. And what they found is that there's some really cool things about Saturn that we didn't know that now we do know. And some of those things really point to how young Saturn must be.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away.
That's a surprising thing. The more that they actually find out about the universe and find out about the planets and the stars and so on, the more they realize they don't know, but the more it does not point to Big Bang billions of years ago.
Right.
And in fact, the first one dealt with the magnetic field that they found, and again, they couldn't understand why it seems to be perfectly straight, and on the basis of current theories, how it's generated and so on.
It should be gone. It's dying away too quickly, basically. It shouldn't even be there.
So it shouldn't even be there.
If the planet's that old.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's an electric current they found, which is really cool, that's streaming between some of the rings and the upper atmosphere. An electric current.
Yeah.
And they don't know what it does
It's just fascinating.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
I
love it.
Maybe the aliens invented that. But then the third one was interesting. The rings, Saturn's rings, are raining down the equivalent of 800 cars per minute. 1,800, is that what I said? Yeah, 1,800 cars per minute. It deposits, well, this is in kilograms, so Australians will understand this. Americans won't have a clue, right? So 45,000 kilograms of dust and ice. It's about 22,000 pounds of dust and ice and gas every second.
Wow.
So the rings are raining down this stuff every second. How come they're still there after 4 billion years or 4.5 billion years?
That's right.
How come they're still there?
And see, that's what they're saying. They're saying the rings are disappearing faster than we thought.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the magnetic field is
dying faster.
How can it be? How can it still be there?
Still be so powerful. Number one. Yeah.
So isn't it fascinating when you see all this, and yet they would ignore it and say, oh well, it's billions of years old.
Right. See, we would look at this and say, wow, this is an excellent confirmation of what we expect from Scripture. Excellent confirmation.
And
we
the
don't see that in
complexity.
the
I mean, I just would think of the rings as being, you know, dust and ice and you know, rock. I mean, nothing significant, but yet there's obviously a lot more going on here than
a lot
we
of charged particles. That's
you know, in regard to that last article about the Freedom from Religion Foundation and Give Us Our Daily Bread sign, somebody said here, did they object because they can't read it? And then I thought, well, maybe because in many ways public school education is not what it used to be, so maybe they couldn't read it.
Well, somebody here said that those in the Freedom from Religious group attack the Daily Bread sign because their conscience is eating at them.
Well, there could be truth.
Well, that's true too, because underneath it all, everyone knows that there's a God. The Bible says that, Romans 1. God has made it evident to all that there's a God, and we have a conscience. Romans 2 says we know what's right and what's wrong.
Jesus is the bread of life, so, you know, maybe there's something there.
All right, Neanderthal-like features in 450,000-year-old fossil teeth from the Italian Peninsula. So basically what this is saying is that the Neanderthals, which they claim to be hundreds of thousands of years old, died out maybe a few tens of thousands of years ago, they had tooth structure that they didn't expect a lot earlier on.
Well, they thought that Neanderthals go back supposedly 300,000+ years. Now they're saying, oh, now they go back 450,000 years. But
we switch the dates.
Yeah, we don't believe that, of course. But the interesting thing is that it's another example where they actually say here in the article, the discovery of Neanderthal-like teeth so early in the record adds support to the suggestion of an early divergence of the Neanderthal lineage from our own. In other words, they're changing evolution again. You know what happens just about every day? Oh, we got this new information. Oh, we've got to change our views of evolution. Oh, we're changing it all the time. By the way, the Bible doesn't change. Have you noticed that? The Bible doesn't change. Evolution continues to change all the time, and they present evolution as fact in the school system, and they say you can't trust the Bible. But it's the Bible that doesn't change, and nothing contradicts the Bible in observational science or anything like that. Of course, we don't agree with the ages they put on this. Or anything, but
these formed, you know, these were a people group that was around after the Tower of Babel at some point during the Ice Age.
That's right. These teeth were found in what's called the Middle Pleistocene, and Pleistocene is basically Ice Age layers, which was after the flood, after people were migrating around.
Do you think they had dentists?
You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they would have done some.
So these are fossil teeth.
Fossil teeth. That's right. We find teeth in the boot.
So when you get,
because Italy's shaped
so
like
when you get old, do your teeth turn into fossil teeth?
They could.
You might have to get false teeth, but not fossil teeth. Somebody asked, how are Avery and her baby any pictures? I don't have any pictures today, but they are doing well.
They are doing well. Fact is, I ran into Avery this weekend and got to see the baby, and you know, it was just awesome. So.
Avery's our token millennial that when one of us away, she fills in for them. And some of you may have seen Avery on this, and so people have been keeping up to date.
She'll be back soon. She's almost done with maternity leave, so she'll be back. We're looking forward to that.
So she'll come and fill in when we need
mom,
her
healthy baby.
Yeah, that's a good thing. All right.
And it's an American baby. The previous one was a Canadian baby.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She's from Canada originally.
Yeah.
All right. For environmentalists, UN climate change group implicitly admits extreme weather events not increasing, not caused by greenhouse gases. So this has to do with a report released from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which is under the auspices of the United Nations. And basically, if you actually read the data, and people that are scientists that have read the data say, wait a minute, they're saying things like tornadoes and hurricanes and cyclones, none of that has increased, actually. And so therefore, it has nothing to do with greenhouse gases.
They said, not only is there little evidence that the incidence of extreme events such as drought, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes has increased globally, but the extreme events are little affected by greenhouse gases. That's the opposite of what all these climate change alarmists are saying out there. And the interesting thing is when you look at that, you know, when that latest hurricane hit, or the one in North Carolina, then there's one in Florida, immediately you see on the news people saying, oh, see what climate change is doing, see what climate change is doing. But a lot of the younger generations, they haven't been taught the history of what's happened in our world in regard to weather or in the nation. You go back and you research it, you find out there were bigger hurricanes in the past. There have been more dangerous ones in the past, and
in many cases a lot more.
Anytime there's anything like this happens now, oh, it's climate change. It's climate change. And of course, a lot of the climate change alarmists, they'll say that as they fly in their private jets. They'll talk about
burning fossil fuels
but there's an interesting comment here. It says this report was ignored by the mainstream media. Does that surprise us? No.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and they have an agenda, and so they are going to talk about parts of the report that match their agenda, not the parts of the report that don't match their agenda. And there was another article in Baptist Press that kind of followed up on this and talked about it and said and I liked what this article brought out was, you know, we got to look at the moral aspects of this, because if you make a lot of changes in how we generate energy, it is going to seriously affect people, especially those in third world countries.
Well,
really can.
You know, one of the things that they're saying here is they want to get rid of coal use. In other words, want to stop. In fact, there was one of those people who's running in the elections in New York who said she wants to stop all use of fossil fuels. I mean, they have no idea. I mean,
they have no idea what that means.
The biggest greenhouse gas, by the way, is not carbon dioxide.
It's water.
It's water vapor.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they found out that the sun and solar prominences and solar flares have a lot more to do with climate change. Of course, if you deny the Bible and you deny the flood, you won't understand what's happening with climate change.
That's right.
Because a lot of these climate change alarmists, what they're saying is, oh, we see little changes. It's going to take a long time to overcome this. Actually, change, if you look in the past, even in recorded history, you can see changes go up and down. In fact, if you're at the Ark and you go to our Ice Age exhibit at the Ark, there's a big sign there dealing with climate change and showing you some of the increases in temperature and decrease and the little Ice Age that there was and a few hundred years ago, and shows you what's going on and shows you those things can happen quickly.
See, what the world wants to do is they want to say climate change is human caused. Basically, since the Industrial Revolution, we've thrown a big kink and a whack into everything. But here's the thing. You go back to the flood, that was a massive climate change.
Yeah.
Right there. You have an ice age. It was triggered by the flood. Since that time, we've seen famines like in Abraham's day and all the way up. In fact, there was one in Claudius's day that's mentioned there in the New Testament. So there's a massive famine. You know, we see these kinds of things occur.
Happened.
It's been happening in the past before the Industrial Revolution.
There was a big climate change event when Joseph was in Egypt, remember?
7 years.
Yeah, that was a long one there.
That was a long one.
Remember Elijah praying and there was no rain for 3 days in the land?
Well, and they talk about
3 years, you mean?
3 years, yeah. They talk
3 years,
about, you know, there's being a lot of anti-humanism in the ecological movement, and they're absolutely right. It's all like humans are the bad people, right? We're the bad ones. We need to be removed from the earth.
We're a blight on the earth.
We're a blight on the earth, you know, and we see that. And so that's what we as Christians really have to watch out for, that we're taking care of what God has given us. We're to have dominion over it, and that means take care of it. But that doesn't mean do it at the expense and cause more human suffering.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it makes a difference. When you have an evolutionary worldview, man is no different than the other animals, all the animals. He's just no different. In fact, we're all related to plants. I mean, Bill Nye actually said that when I took him through the Ark on that DVD. He said, yes, we're related to bananas. You know, remember that the next time you eat a banana. It gives you a whole different view of eating a banana when you think about it. Banana, is that what you say here?
Banana.
But the thing is, from a biblical perspective, man is made in God's image. Man is different. And God's Son stepped into history to die on a cross and be raised from the dead, offers a free gift of salvation. Now, that's not for the animals, that's not for the plants.
Yeah.
And so when we look at other humans on this planet, we realize we're all related and we're all made in God's image. We need to be taking care of people.
Yeah.
And one of the things they're saying here, these climate change alarmists, what they want to do is actually going to really hurt people in some of those third world countries and
now, I don't want
places
people to
like that.
misunderstand us here. We're not opposed to renewable energy and renewable sources, wind power. So we're all for that kind of stuff. We like to see that
We
kind of
talked
thing.
about it on Answers News last week.
That's right. And in fact, you know, when it comes to things like coal, you know, we've encouraged you know, the burning of coal to be cleaner and things like that. Most people don't realize that burning coal now is about 80% cleaner than what it used to be, you know, 25, 30 years ago. So we want to encourage that kind of thing, but we also have to be very careful about how we're looking at the environment. Are we looking at the environment as though we are stewards of it and we need to take care of it on God's behalf, or are we looking at it like we need to worship it and bow down to it? You see, that's the question.
Somebody here says, I don't understand how they think they can tell what is happening in the future when they can't even tell us the weather for tomorrow. Good point.
Well, that's true.
Point taken.
That is true.
Excellent point.
In fact, they forecast a lot of rain here today, and it looks like it's all gone south.
Who knows?
So it changed.
Yeah.
But you know, as man advances in technology, as we build up technology, then we're able to go back and fix some of the things that have happened in the past in regard to, you know, pollution and so on. And that's the whole point. Man can do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same as a lot of times the evolutionary environmentalists have this idea that nature is good, man is bad. But you've got to remember something, nature is cursed. Yeah. And so there are times when then they would say things like, oh, there's a fire. Well, fire is good. It's natural. Let it go. Whereas we would say sometimes fires can be good for the environment, but sometimes they can be very bad, and they can also hurt man. Yeah. So we need to look at that and have a balance, in the way we look at things. But it's only when you understand from a biblical perspective that man is made in God's image, that we're given dominion to use the environment for man's good and for God's glory, and that it's a sin-cursed creation as well. And so therefore, because of that, things can happen that we can help overcome or improve. I mean, if you don't have the right foundation, you're going to have the wrong worldview.
All right, let's go ahead and hit another one here.
Yeah, dinosaurs buried more rapidly than thought by evolutionists, that is. Like, we never doubted that. But this is about the Morrison Formation, which covers about 700,000 square miles across the American West. Lots of dinosaurs found in there. And what they have found is, first of all, that basically that it had to be deposited in a very short period of time, even by evolutionary standards, because of the dating that they did on it, and also the fact that there isn't a lot of evolution of the dinosaurs throughout the formation, which is very, very thick.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I mean, you look at this is primarily Jurassic sediment, which would have been during the flood. That's when this would have been deposited. But, you know, they think in terms of uniformitarianism. You know, this sense that these rock layers lay down slowly and gradually over millions and billions of years in many cases. But with the Jurassic sediment, now they're arguing that this stuff was laid down quickly during a flood, for example, or during some sort of catastrophe. Now, I want people to understand there's a gigantic elephant in the room if this is the case. Because the uniformitarian model assumes that these layers were laid down slowly and gradually over a long time. But if they're now saying, no, that's not the case, this was laid down by a big flood or a big catastrophe of some sort, well, all of a sudden, all that millions of years is gone if this was laid down quickly. So here's what's happened. Out in the secular world, a lot of people are saying, well, the rock layers are no longer the evidence for the millions of years. It's between the layers. Now, here's the elephant in the room. If the alleged evidence for millions of years is between the layers, there's nothing there. So where's the evidence for millions of years? It suddenly vanishes. Yeah. That's what happens as soon as you open the door to catastrophes.
It used to be, evolutionists say it happened so slowly you couldn't see it. Now they say it happened so fast you missed it.
We can't see it.
Bingo.
So
they make the evidence fit.
Somebody here said, and I have to disagree with this slightly, they said animals don't recycle. But you see, rabbits actually eat food, excrete it, and then they eat it again.
Yes, they chew the cud.
They recycle. They recycle their waste.
Yeah. So
think about that.
The cud.
All right.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be a great.
That's gross. Look that up on our website.
Rabbits and chewing the cud.
Yeah, I thought it would be a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're out of time for today, and so we'll be back on Thursday at 2 o'clock with more. Thanks.
All right. God bless you all.
Thank you.